From top of the charts to uncanny memes, Nice is a figure that you either love, hate, or hate to love. Nice went through quite the journey as he unexpectedly turned into one of the most complex and developed characters in the show, the embodiment of perfection. But could Nice's greatest trait be the cause of his downfall? Today I want to talk about Nice, the industry plant that crashed and burned harder than Esol's hero rank, and how perfectionism led to his downfall, but also might be just what saves him. Standing at number 15 in the hero rankings, Nice was fabricated by the treatment agency to be the perfect hero. At the start of the series, the Treatment Corp's highest ranked hero was Firm Man, another hero that was put on a pedestal and made to seem invincible. Something to note about these agencies is that they usually tend to aim for a specific type of hero. The Treatment Corp tends to aim for heroes that seem invincible or, in a sense, perfect. During the Lin Ling arc, we can only receive small pieces of information regarding who Nice was. We can piece together that Nice has a background in dance and is seen as perfect, to the point that Lin Ling himself is irritated at his perfect attitude, and then experiences firsthand how it's all an act. His girlfriend is stuck in a contract, his appearances are rehearsed, and his arch nemesis is on Treatment's payroll. Nothing about his image is actually real. Nice was scouted by Treatment Corp when he was 18 years old in order to play this specific role. The official timeline also reveals that him and Rek were set up at age 19 to be rivals, and around this time, Nice would also begin his fabricated relationship with Moon. By the time episode 1 started, Nice was 24 years old and Moon was 22. They had been keeping up this facade of dating for 6 years up to this point. By the end of the Lin Ling arc, Nice is revealed to be dead and is replaced with Lin Ling, aka the Commoner. He's ranked number 10 and is 21 years old. For those who don't know, while To Be Hero X was premiering, a real-life popularity poll was being hosted on Bilibili, which is China's version of YouTube and social media. Essentially, it's the real-life counterpart of FOMO. The winner of the popularity poll would receive a music video, which is what you saw at the season finale end credits, because, spoiler alert, X won the popularity poll. It's also said that the overall results will influence the power level of the characters in Season 2. At the end of the Lin Ling arc, Nice stands on number 3 on the popularity poll. Lin Ling impersonating Nice was definitely a huge factor that led him to rank so high early on, since the commoner category wasn't introduced as an option on the polls until episode 4 in order to prevent spoilers. Overall, people saw Nice as a victim, a person with a dream slowly broken by the hero system. Given the fact that he jumped, many assumed that he was depressed and just didn't show it, and that's that. But there was a lot of speculation on as to why is Nice still on the popularity poll at all. I mean, he's dead. Lin Ling is on there. Why didn't they remove Nice yet? Why is he his own separate category if he's dead? But we'll check back later and see how Nice is still doing as the season's going on. So, what is perfectionism? Well, according to this random psychology website, perfectionism is a trait that makes life an endless report card on accomplishments or looks. When healthy, it can be self-motivated and drive you to overcome adversity and achieve success. When unhealthy, it could be a fast and enduring track to unhappiness. There's different kinds of perfectionism, of course, and different levels to it. Sometimes being a perfectionist means putting those expectations upon yourself. Other times, it means wanting things around you to be perfect, or a combination of them both, in which you believe those around you expect perfection from you, so you must perform to meet those expectations. I like to call this oldest child syndrome because if you know, you know. Something to point out, though, is that being a perfectionist isn't necessarily a bad thing on its own, but being an extreme perfectionist has a lot of negative traits to be wary of. It's common to procrastinate, be overly self-critical, and experience burnout from stress. Some can struggle with setting unrealistic standards and goals, and then dealing with the aftermath of not reaching them. Being a perfectionist comes with a lot of stress and can lead into having anxiety or depression, or just a general fear of failure, with small mistakes feeling like huge setbacks or life-changing events. Extreme perfectionists can also want approval or praise for their accomplishments, and become even more critical of themselves if this isn't met. All this is important to consider, not just because we live in a society that demands perfection, but because these aspects are part of the overall story of Nice that the show is trying to tell. Right away, from the first episode, we understand that the audience perception of Nice is incredibly important. From the small scares that Lin Ling receives trying to keep up the Nice persona, to the way that Lin Ling's habits develop mimicking Nice's older habits. As he slowly turns more and more into what Nice was, Lin Ling mentions that he's far more of a neat freak than before, that his existing tendencies of being a perfectionist are amplified. In the first episode, once Lin Ling arrives in the tower, he's exhausted and randomly drops his cape on the floor. But in future episodes, you can see how he instinctually turns cups to face a specific direction to make sure they have a sense of order, and has far more detail-oriented mannerisms. Similar to how Furman was always expected to stand tall, Nice's image of being perfect impacted his day-to-day life far more than he would let on. Because of his audience expecting him to be perfect, he was literally hardwired to act perfect even in the most minuscule of details. This is what I speculate Moon alluded to earlier on when describing how Nice was egotistical and hated anything being out of place. It wasn't until finishing the season and going back that I realized just how much weight Moon's thoughts on Nice carried. It's hard to imagine them actually putting up with each other under the same roof. Judging from Moon's thoughts on Nice, it's safe to assume that Nice made his own image his biggest priority, and by extension, he wanted Moon to also have that same level of perfection, since she's directly associated with him. Knowing that Nice comes from a dance background and seemingly excelled at it, he most likely had perfectionist tendencies already. In activity like dance or music, especially, you always have to chase literal perfection to succeed in those roles. His growth in audience made it so his pressure to be perfect also grew, both in expecting himself to be perfect, his audience expecting him to be perfect, and his own desire to meet up to Shang's standards as the perfect hero. I don't even want to know how many times I said perfect already. But in order to understand where the cracks began to form psychologically, especially in the minds of the audience, we need to go back a few years earlier, specifically 2 years before present day, aka the spaceship incident. At this point in the show, we hadn't seen or heard from Nice in several episodes, or months if we're looking at real life weight. But the last thing we were fed about Nice was that, well, he was nice. Him and Rek had a backstory about wanting to be heroes before being turned into just another cog in the machine. The pressure got to Nice to the point that he just ended it all. So seeing him show up in the spaceship was literally a jump scare, because, surprise, surprise, he's actually there against our current characters. In fact, he teamed up with the other super controversial character of the series, and they're doing a hit together to kill off this whole crew. Nice went from being nice to menacing in less time than the audience had to realize what was going on. I mean, 1 minute he's living out his doomed yaoi ship, and the next minute he's a psychopath. But Queen and Lucky Cyan showing up would just be the first steps to Nice's downfall, as he failed his mission and therefore was on Shang's bad side. In general, we can see that Nice being, well, not nice, was a huge shock for everyone. As for the popularity polls, surprisingly enough, Nice managed to stick it out and remain in 4th place. He hardly dropped at all during the several episode months gap, between the first time we saw him and the most recent time we had seen him in episode 20. Keep in mind, at this point, it had been like 4 months since we had seen Nice again, and he still managed to keep his rank. Which is crazy to see because other characters were swapping all over the place. There was a war going on. The other huge incident after this was the Smile incident. Nice had been pretty cold and seemingly focused on himself for the most part, but Smile is his hero. He looked up to Smile's perfect persona that can't be defeated and is always bringing joy and hope to his followers. Though we then learned that this also comes at a cost, as Smile himself isn't perfect either. But Nice likely doesn't know this. Nice simply is just striving to be like the image of Smile. He's chasing a false pretense, an unachievable goal, thinking that he could actually reach it and that he should be able to reach it. Nice being ordered to take down Smile was the worst case scenario for him. On one hand, there's Smile, the hero he looked up to and deeply cares about his opinion. On the other hand, there's Nice and his expectation to succeed, heightened by Shang's constant reminder of his previous failures, that Nice is already taking personally to begin with. During the fight, we see how the crowd begins to turn on Nice and judge him for fighting Dragon Boy seemingly unprovoked. A reminder of how easy it is for a crowd to turn on you, especially if they're arriving mid-fight and with no context. Nice's entire arc is honestly just so well done in my opinion. One of my favorite scenes from the Nice's whole arc that he has is this upcoming scene right here. So with Smile dying, Nice is devastated. And in that particular moment, he fully breaks down from that perfect persona and just cries. It's the first time in the series we witnessed Nice do this. Even when he jumped to his death, he was trying to be charismatic and did the pose. This is literally the only moment we see that he just breaks completely, even with a crowd of people nearby that could literally just film him right now and film his whole breakdown. Nice had become a very divisive character by now. Some think he just straight up sucks and is the bad guy, while others believe he could still be redeemed. Rankings-wise, I couldn't figure out where he's at for this specific episode, but I'm putting my money on him being number 4, and you'll see why in a bit. Episode 23 showed a new low for Nice, and it showed how desperate Nice is to reach his goal as he's handling Shang's dirty work and driving people out of their homes. The smile incident truly snapped something inside of him. When he confronts Ahu, he does his procedural smile, trying to do things the nice way first, but when Ahu declines, Nice no longer cares to put up the facade. He's visibly tired, drained, and just impatient. He doesn't quite care as much for others to see him as perfect, only in big events. His efforts to reach perfection has led him to be completely drained and miserable. But even then, when hit with a few drops of fear, Nice freaks out. He doesn't even try to seem calm or in control, because he can't. Every failure is a proof of incompetence and his inability to be nice, to keep up with the perfect persona. In the mind of Nice, and probably Shang, it shouldn't be a persona. He should be perfect. He should be able to accomplish everything he was supposed to do. He was scouted for this. He was funded for this. Nice is literally backed by one of the top 4 management companies. Why does he keep failing to reach the top 10? When it comes to Shang and Nice's relationship, one thing to understand is that Shang is described as a bit of a gambler. He likes to take a risk and hopefully profits more because of it. By investing in Nice and putting all these resources into him, he expects results. He expects Nice to deliver on his gamble. And seeing how his gamble is currently failing, it's really pissing him off. Shang telling Nice that he's a failure makes this whole situation so much worse. Not only did he roast him, but he said everything that Nice didn't need to hear in that state. He vocalized and told him his greatest fear, that he's a failure. When Nice gets a few drops of fear, it's not yet confirmed what exactly it did to him, but I honestly think his outburst was all his own doing. He's struggling to control his persona, he's failing his missions, he's lost sight and was directly involved in the death of his perfect idol, and his spot in the top 10 got taken by a dog. We also know that around this time, he stopped talking to Rek, his one friend, before he took on the Nice persona. When fear inflicts people, it makes them deformed, but a few drops doesn't always do that. Ghostblade got a few drops directly on his skin, and he was fine. Nice only had them on his costume, and he quickly wiped it off. He didn't become deformed right away. Nice going into Shang's place and asking for help honestly seems like a panic attack more than anything else to me. When inflicted with a huge wave of panic, many people describe it as feeling like you're going to literally die, like something bad is happening to your body, and inaction will directly cause you to just die in that moment. Nice was displaying every symptom, and it makes complete sense that the PTSD of seeing what happened to Smile would trigger this sort of reaction from him. As of making this video, Season 1 of To Be Hero X has just ended. Like, literally. Nice seems to still be sitting in 4th place on the popularity polls, but interestingly enough, his design has been updated to resemble his appearance in episode 24. With purple cracks throughout his entire body, he has quite literally shattered his image of being perfect, with the cracks making him look insane and being a physical manifestation of the cracks in his persona. Some people theorize that this might mean that in order to save himself, in the next season, he will just fully embrace his imperfect self. But that pretty much summarizes the whole video on Ice. Who do you think had the most compelling arc this season? Or who are you looking forward to hearing more from? Do you think Luo's in the basement? Or do you think Isol might get redeemed? Let me know. Maybe I'll make a video on it. But I'd like to thank everybody for 250 subscribers. I'm on a goal to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you like this sort of content, please consider subscribing. If there's another character you'd like for me to talk about or show, let me know. But yeah, bye.
Nice.